Just a quick review. Some of you may remember a little presentation just entitled I Want an Aeroplane. Well, to give you an idea of the timeline of all of this, there she is. January 2012, we decided on a Sonex. A picture from Oshkosh. You had a few options. You could put a Volkswagen engine in it. I did. They put a Jabiru in it. I wasn't too keen on that. You could have a tail wheel or a nose wheel. Now, my philosophy in flying aeroplanes is I've never believed in making it harder than it has to be. So mine's got the wheel at the front as well. There are many who disagree with me. Had to have a standard tail. Jan Endy said to me, don't you dare put a V-tail on anything. So I took that on board as well. In May, Murray Corf and I went to Yarrawonga. And we went to the Sonex fly-in. I think there was about a dozen of them there. There would be probably twice that many in Australia now. The president of the Sonex Association, a gentleman by the name of Stuart Trist, he was very keen on my aeroplane because I told him that mine was going to have a nose wheel, and so does his. And I think ours are the only two aeroplanes in Australia, two Sonexes in Australia, that have got nose wheels. June 2012, we sent money to the States. Sonex, incidentally, is on the field at Oshkosh, which I think most of you have probably heard of, if not visited. And it was a great time to buy something from America. I got 99.6 cents to the dollar. It was actually about $1.02 something. So the banks, of course, always help themselves to 3 cents. So off we went. In July 2012, we went to Oshkosh. And I went over to the factory and said, I'm Richard Ewing, here I am, I bought one. And Mark Schlabel, who was the manager, said to me, oh geez, you should have been here yesterday. And I said, bugger, why is that? He said, well, that's when I waved your kit goodbye on the truck. So I was kind of hoping that I'd get a picture, but it didn't happen. So we took this picture and away we went. In September, the kit arrived. Now that is the two main spars. The options were you could buy the spars in pieces, put them together yourself, or you could pay not a lot more money and they would send them to you all built up. Given that I thought the spars were moderately important, I thought I'd give myself the best possible chance and let an expert put them together. If you ever wonder how big the crate is, well there it is folks. I forgot what the Yanks call that type of plywood, but I've seen that on a couple of parts that have turned up. But that is a complete kit for building a Sonex. No paint, no instruments, but apart from that, everything else is there. Oh, no tools. Sonex say to you that the aeroplane can be built with just the tools that you have in your shed. Haven't got a pneumatic rivet? Bunnings have. So you go down to Bunnings Aerospace and you buy stuff from Bunnings, and then it's in your shed and then you can do it. And Bunnings shares did very, very well out of the Ewing project and all the other ones too, I suggest. But that's the size of the box, and we couldn't actually lift it off, so we undid it and unpacked the box. I think from memory there were 18 separate cardboard boxes in there. So I spent about 6 weeks cataloguing all the bits and organising all the bits and pieces, and finally we got to the stage where we were ready to start the build. Well, you might recall this was the point where I talked to the folks and I brought the tail. And I brought the fin with me. Didn't have a top on it at that stage. Johnny Brown and John Jansen, the late JJ, looked at it and said, yeah, he's not an idiot after all. It looks as though he did a fairly reasonable job. Interestingly enough, when I look at that, we'd only built the two bits of the vertical stabiliser and, the horizontal stabiliser and the vertical stab. We built the elevators and the rudder later on and put the tips on. It's interesting to relate that by the time I'd finished, it was only the right-hand stabiliser that stayed. All the other ones got rebuilt. It's sort of a measure it up and decide, no, it's not good enough, we're going to do it again. But that happens. In January 2013, there's a little quote from my building diary. The first major boo-boo. Measured and cut left-hand stabiliser skin. Cut on the wrong side of the line. Destroyed the skin. You head. The first major boo-boo. Ordered a new skin. We did a lot of ordering parts from Oshkosh. I think I made the comment that if you're thinking of building one of these, if you've got a huge ego and you can't bear to be wrong, don't go anywhere near it, it'll kill you. So there we go, April 2013, we finished the tail. The next part of the project was the wings. We're sort of going to walk through pretty quickly and build a Sonex in about 3/4 of an hour. These are the two rear spars, the rear wing spars. They're very light duty. And on this rear spar, there's a couple of holes. Whoops, these ones right up here. Murray and I built these and they were schmick, just fabulous. And I rang him up the next day and I said, bugger. And he said, what? I said, you know those two holes up the back? And he said, yeah. I said, these things aren't a mirror image of one another. They're different. So we only had to rebuild one of them. The other one was right. There's one of my recurring nightmares. The main spar, before we put any paint on it or anything. I had a nightmare early in the piece where I had built the whole aeroplane and I had constructed the wings with the left-hand spar on the right-hand side and the right-hand spar on the left-hand side. I'm here to tell you it didn't happen. There was a person who advertised a Sonex kit and he said, needs spars. And I think it happened to him and all he has is my sincere sympathy. Geez, we looked at that for a long, long time before we drilled holes in it, I'm here to tell you. So that's the structure of the thing. People say, how much work do you have to do? The easy answer is lots. Some of these holes are drilled, a lot of them are not. They describe it as a match hole drill kit, and it kind of is, but they've got one set of holes drilled and you have to drill the other ones. So once we've structured that, we took to this thing, had to cut a couple of holes in it, and interestingly enough, the professionals built it. And I had to put some bits in it. And I said to Murray, have a read of the plans. This has got rivets all the way along. But there's spots where there shouldn't be rivets there. You see what you make of it. He read it and he said, buddy, you're right. And I said, should we drill the rivets out? And he said, why don't we send a message to Sonex? And that's one of the nice things that modern communications do. You can sit down and send an email to good old Kerry, who's the man who gives all the advice, and his comment was, oh yeah, sometimes our riveter gets a bit ambitious, so Richard, he often puts a couple of extras in. Yeah, you're right, just drill them out, you'll be fine. And they're all with a nice little centre hole, so they're easy to drill out. One to me. Okay, so there it is. There's the main spar, built up in several sections. A lot of people have looked at it and said, wow, that is a massive piece of equipment. And that kind of makes me feel better. There's the wing skins. Once you've done all the bits and pieces, put all the things together, you use these little devices. Some of you might be well and truly familiar with them, called a Clico. Now in this case, the wing skins were drilled. The ribs were not. So you had to position the ribs accurately, then you had to get them right lined up with the hole. What we did was draw a line down the middle of the rib so you could move it around and see when you actually had it in the right place, drill the holes. You drill those, pardon me using old technology, but 3 30-seconds of an inch, and the little silver ones went in. The idea is you bore those in and you've got them very, very close. you take them out, drill it out to an 1/8, technically drill it out to a -30 riveting size. We found an 1/8 worked really well, Jan Endy's recommendation. But there's the top skin, just a flat skin that sat on there. That's the bottom skin. We've turned it over, and once again, just a flat skin. And located all those holes, put them in place. Disasters? None. The bent piece in this case was the nose. That turned up and pre-bent. What you needed to do was get some cargo straps, put them on, pull the thing into place, get it in the right place, drill, plico, drill, rivet, and then finally when you were done, there it is with most of the final sized rivets there. A couple of things, and here's where you could get trapped. In the wing, there are things like these lines here. They're the pedo lines, the static lines, and there's a little mention to put these in place. If you skip read, you can finish up closing up the wing. We did a few of those, so we know how to drill out rivets, but it's a lot better if you get those sort of things done before you close it up. And likewise, there was some wiring to be done in there as well. And there's the wiring there. Interestingly enough, mine is just a little aeroplane for driving around on a nice sunny day. Are we going to have any lights out on the wingtips, strobes? No, they're only any good for night time anyway. Only birds and fools fly, and birds don't fly at night. Is that the way it goes? So yeah, I'm not flying this little thing at night. There is nothing particularly that will help you grope around in the dark, so it's not my intention to do that. And there's the exercise of the little hand. Yeah, that's something I found a long time ago, and it sort of got adopted as the mascot of the build. Still sits in the aeroplane now. There it is, all riveted together. The rivets used in the Sonex don't have to be, but they are pulled rivets, or pop rivets if you like. The aviation people get a bit frosty at you if you call them that. Perfect for my situation. The aeroplane was built on my patio at home. Yeah, my wife was really pleased about that. And it was really good because when you set these rivets, all you get's a little cough out of the rivet gun and it's done. If you're setting standard driven rivets, yeah, there's a great deal of noise, and I don't think I would have got away with that in the neighbourhood. Most people don't. So that was a big plus for me, was the type of rivets. Right, well there was one wing completed, and that was really just a question of then take it away, park it, do the other one. The ailerons, putting the ailerons together, a couple of things that I learned sort of later in the business. These are the mass balancers, and that's really quite a big lump of lead. They sent you a big lump of lead and didn't really give you any guidance as to how to go about that. I tried cutting the lump of lead into the right shape and putting that in there, but it really wasn't all that good. What I did discover was if you built a little box the right shape and then heated it up in a very cheap Kmart saucepan and let it melt, you could then cast yourself these. But that turned up a good deal later. Here's where it's nice to have some very good friends. That's the tip of the aileron there, and it just comes straight. But if you've got a good friend who has a router and all those bits and pieces, he makes up a little former block like that, two of them actually. And at that point you can tap that into shape, works like a charm. There it is there, you can see it's drilled, ready to go, riveted, and you can see the construction is very much along these lines. And again, I'm not sort of talking to anybody in the industry who's familiar, but a lot of people who've come to have a look have said, jeepers, it doesn't look very thick. And I've said to them, well, no, it doesn't, because it's got a fly. If we made it out of 3/4 inch mild steel plate, it probably wouldn't. But yeah, the people who've looked at it have really said the same thing. Gee, it's really clever, isn't it? It's really strong, but it's really light. Very, very thin sheets of aluminium. That was fun. My good friend Johnny Pittman again built me up some wing racks. And they were just some surplus timber, cut them out, made the bits and pieces. Not all that big a deal, but boy oh boy, when you've got somebody who'll do that for you, that's really neat. And one of the lovely things about this build was all of the nice people I've met who've said, I've got one of those, or I can make one of those, or I can give you a few pointers on that. Very, very rewarding part of the exercise. For a long time, the two wings, the left and right, sat in the garage, with my long-suffering wife saying, gee, it's pretty hard to get out of the car now because there's not all that much room. Bit of a truth, though she didn't bang the wings because I don't think she wanted to chip the door on the Elantra. The other wing was taken up, we did all the bits and pieces. There it is, all complete. You can see the flaps are fitted, the ailerons are fitted. There's the control rods. Very good little aeroplane in this regard. But the elevators and the ailerons, yeah, rods, and work very, very well too. And there was the interesting part. There's the empty table. So what comes next, Murray said. Now, the fuselage, that's all that's left. Gosh, we should have this thing in the air in another year. September 2014, yeah, that was always going to happen. A couple of people have said to me, look, what did you do? Did you make it from scratch or did you buy a kit? And I said, no, I bought a kit. And they said, oh, well, that makes it easy, isn't it? You just take it and bolt it together. Yeah, right. There's all the vertical bits and pieces for the rear fuselage. So what you finish up with is pieces. It's a C-section of aluminium. You've got to cut it all up, you've got to drill all those holes, and you've got to get them in the right place. Let me show you why particularly these holes have to be in the right place. They're left and right, each of those. There's the two sides of the rear fuselage with all those pieces in place. You notice when you look through here, to here, to here, to here, guess what, folks? This is the back end here. That's where the rudder cable goes through. What happens if you don't get the holes lined up? Well, you can see what had happened. I was really pleased when I saw that. I said to Murray, it looks as though we got something right anyway. You notice all the bits and pieces are painted with a primer. I painted just primer because that was the recommendation by a few of the guys. We're in Woodvale, not super close to the ocean, but close enough. And if you have a bare bit of aluminium, yeah, you can see the corrosion on it if you leave it. So that's really given the aeroplane, I think, probably a bit more life. They're the two side bits. There are a couple of bits there for the rudder cable to go through. Back to making bits again. These bits were all there to put those two parts together. So these are all the horizontal parts that make this work. Now, a lot of people looked at that and said, yeah, well, it looks like a sort of a crooked box. Pretty right too. However, you can see the idea. There's all those horizontal parts. They're those two parts that you just looked at put together. This stage there's no top on it, there's no bottom on it, but it's in place. Somebody said to me, when do you take the clecos out and rivet it? That's when you really have sat down and thought about it for a long, long time to decide you really can put it together and you're not going to have to pull it to bits again because you've forgotten something. Oblique answer? Yeah, you bet. Got more oblique as we went on. That was the unit all together, and now we're ready to put the curved top on. At this stage, the bottom wasn't on it yet. Bear in mind, this is the back of the fuselage. The tail is going to go on the top right there. There's a couple of brilliant aerospace technicians. That's the turtle deck. Somebody else might know why it's called a turtle deck. I don't know. It's the round top of the fuselage. It's actually a couple of flat sheets. You put that together, fairly precise measurement, drilled a lot of holes, put a lot of clecos in, and then tucked that in at the top, exactly 1 inch. Now, assuming you did that, you finished up with that complete, clecoed into place, and then you built the inside of that component there. That's got the turtle taken off it now. But they're all the parts that make up, this is looking from the front. That's about where my back rests on when we're bowling around in the aeroplane. And they're the component parts that provide the sort of strength. And once again, a lot of people looked at that and said, gee, there's not much holds it together. I said, no, there's a lot that holds it together, but it doesn't weigh a lot. And there was the finished rear fuselage. So we got sides, you can see it's all riveted together. Did we forget anything? No. This attaches to the front fuselage by a piece here, a piece there, a piece there, and a piece there. And all of these skins, you'll notice the floor is not yet in there, all of the skins also attach. So it's got a pretty good grip at the front of the aeroplane, which is kind of nice. So at this stage, I looked at the tail. There's a little bit of bent metal here, and my good friend John Brown, who quite a few of you will know, 727 captain, 320 captain, flight engineer, licensed aircraft maintenance engineer, all round a really good Royal Smart person. So somebody who's really worth knowing. John looked at that and said, nah, come down to my place, Richard, I'll show you how to bend that. So that got all taken to bits. The skin was still okay. I made all this and we went down to John's place. When he saw it, he said to me, you don't put that together with these bloody pop rivets, are you, Richard? I said, well, that's what the plans say, John. He said, no, we'll use real rivets here. So he got out his super good stuff and had a look at that. It's just beautiful work. Incidentally, this man has built an RV8, and it is just a work of art. Everybody who goes down and looks at John's aeroplane comes back feeling inadequate. That's it. Anyway, he did the whole thing with these driven rivets. And I said to him, geez, John, it's very nice. And he said, oh, this is the way to go. And I've always maintained that if I'm bowling along a couple of years from now and something happens and I slump forward on the controls and the aeroplane dives towards the earth, as it exceeds the speeds and parts fall off, the very last part to fall off will be the fin of the aeroplane. Very, very strong stuff. Good old Johnny Brown. Now, here was a really, really big moment, because one of the things that Murray had said, we were putting together this bit, and he said, now hang on a minute, let's really, really have a look at the tail, because that bit at the back's got to be absolutely right, because everything starts from there. So I said, yeah, righto, what a good idea. Well, we did. All this little bit down here. And then at this stage, we put the tail on. Why was that a big deal? Well, it was a big deal because at that point we built bits. We built quite a lot of bits. Wings, tail, fuselage, but we hadn't put any big bits together. We put that big bit on, and guess what? It fitted beautifully. Well done, my mate. So that was a big moment. We got that on, and away we went. Here's a little thought for you. This is me and my grandson, aged about 5. And Riley has been a great assistance, more so as he's grown up. He's a great man for getting into places to put a nut on. He knows which way the nut turns. He knows how to put a washer on. He knows how to put a spanner on. He knows how to read spanner sizes. I feel a bit bad teaching him about 5/16 and 3/8. It's not exactly Christian these days, but that's what you get. Anyway, there we are having a discussion. Right at the end of this year, he turned up, now 10, nearly 11, and said, hey, Grandad, where's the aeroplane? And I said, it's gone off to the paint shop, Riley. And he said, but you've always had the aeroplane here. I realised when you're about 5 years old, 5 years is a long, long time in your life. So yeah, he's the guy who's put up his hand and said, can I have the first ride? I said, well, after I've flown off the 40 hours, Riley, you got the first ride. So he'll hold me to that, nothing short. The firewall. We're now going to work on the front of the aeroplane, and the first thing I've run into is this stainless steel firewall. I'm sure there are people, skilled people, who know how to work with this stuff. It is horrible to work with. It's hard to drill, it's impossible to cut, can't file it. As I say, I'm sure there's people who know all about that. I'm not one of them. And then we started putting together, you guessed it, all the same old, the bits for the front of the aeroplane. So stay with me now. There's the back of the aeroplane, the fuselage that we've just finished. Now we need somewhere for us to sit, put the fuel tank in and put the engine on. These are all the parts, some of which were supplied, bits like those bits, but a lot of which you had to cut and make them up. It was interesting, but we're getting pretty good at it by this stage. And here is the right-hand side of the aeroplane. So that's the front. That's where the firewall's going to go. This is where the flap linkage will go through. This is where the main spar of the wing will go through. This is where the ailerons will go through. All these bits are now attached. The engine is going to hang on those bits there. So when you have a look at it, you have a look at the engine mounts on your motor car, pretty substantial chunk of steel, and then you have a look at these. Weeny little bits and pieces, but I'm here to tell you at this stage they're strong enough because nothing's fallen off yet. But there's 4 of those, one at each corner on the front section. That's where the engine's hanging off. There's the right-hand side put in place. So as I say, it's got a attachment point there, an attachment point there, and all of the skin points attached, and this part as well. It really is a very, very strong bond, as indeed, of course, so it has to be. There it is looking from the outside, and you can see there's those traces of primer, and that just keeps the assembly wet. And you can see there's those holes that we talked of, flaps there, ailerons there, and there's the wing where that's going to go through. We'll show you how it looks in the inside when we get a little further. Here's the left-hand one. Now this brings up a minor hiccup. A couple of people have looked at that little device there and said, that's just a piece of aluminium with some holes in it. And I always reply that that's the mounting point for the X-band radar. Well, that's a much more imaginative story than saying, see these holes here, well I drilled them down there first of all, and I'm buggered if I was going to buy a whole new piece. So we cut out a little bit there, and that's what the rudder pedal, rudder bar mounts on there. This is the left-hand side put in place, and you can see engine mounts top and bottom. So essentially, aside from that non-standard unit there, everything is now set and ready to put the thing together. And again, that's the back of the fuselage that we're looking at, and this is how the front is building up. And if we have a look at the next one, you'll see the front of the fuselage. Put a little vertical bar in here just to hold it together. You can see that the bottom floor is in place. These are now set up. So now we've got a back of the fuselage, front of the fuselage. There's that dreadful piece of stainless steel, which is in a finished state and ready to go in place. And lo and behold, there it is, the firewall. There's a top that's going to go on there, and that's just a straight sheet. It was a little bit larger than it had to be. In the end, I finished it up, cutting it with a tiny little grinding disc, and that kind of worked. We at one stage had to put a hole in the middle there. More on that perhaps later. But there's the firewall, and you can see the side and the back. Somebody very unkindly said, yeah, it looks a bit like a rubbish skip now. Thanks very much. Okay, right. There's the top bit of it on there. Sort of at least it stopped it looking like a rubbish skip. The little bit out the front is where the filler goes for the fuel tank. So looking down the side, you can see back there, there's our side. Now we've really got the fuselage to a stage where it was very, very close to done. Inside, starting to put bits in place. Those sit in there, there's a couple of holes in there that's got to be nice and closely finished, and those are the two bars. And if you look at it closely, you can see that this rudder pedal and that rudder pedal, the right-hand rudder pedals are on that one, left-hand rudder pedals are on the other one. At this stage, the cables, which are going to go down there and there, aren't as yet fitted. That's the floor of the aeroplane in there. So we're looking down into the cockpit now. What we've got here is the control column, control columns. An option for the Sonex was a single stick in the middle. I've always been of the philosophy that the stick should be in front of you and you should have one each. So yeah, I said, no, I'll have the twin stick one, thank you very much. There's the rudder pedals, there's the wing box. Now, here's the deal. When the seat goes in, you're going to find it comes over there. If you've ever driven something like an MGA or an MGTC, where your backside is about a foot away from the bitumen, and you're really sitting on a seat that's almost on the floor, that's this fella. Okay, very, very sports car-ish. Not too sure that it's all that easy to get in for us septuagenarians, but hey, you know, you do what you do. Thank you, sir. So we put the seat in. Now again, looking down there, there's the back of the seat, there's the front of the seat there, or the bottom part of the seat where your backside goes. Your legs go either side there with your feet on there. So you can see it really is very much a sit down on the bottom of the aeroplane, and yeah, you're pretty close to the bitumen, or in the case, to the air, I guess. So it's got upholstery as part of the deal. Very comfortable little aeroplane. There's the fuselage as you saw it earlier on, and now what we've done is we've put on the mount here. Now they have 3 engines that they will let you use. Now I should say that differently. They have 3 recommended engines, and they are the 80 horsepower Jabiru, the 120 horsepower 6-cylinder Jabiru, or the 2.2 litre Volkswagen. That's what I've got. They make a different engine mount for each one. You can see this is obviously for a tricycle gear one, okay, because that's the mounting for the nose wheel. So again, there's a range of those. In answer to your question about the jet engines, have you seen this fellow with the jet engine?
Yeah.
They put a V-tail on it, and then they mount the jet engine up on the back fuselage. The jet engine costs about 1.5 times the price of the kit. The fuel consumption, even for a little engine like that, would make my eyes water anyway. So am I interested in a jet? Nah. My good friend Johnny Higgs rang me up and he said, when are you going to build your engine? John is building a 1X. Now if you can imagine, a 1X is about a 3/4 size Sonex, and it only takes one person, thus a 1X. But he's building the same engine as me. John said to me, how would you feel about coming up to my place and building the engine up there? Well, John's got this really nice shed in Darlington, so it was a bit of a way away, but yeah, why not? And I said, why do you want to do that? And he said, well, I'm not a mechanic, I know bloody nothing about engines. And he said, so I'm figuring you'd probably help me. My background is automotive, so it's only a Volkswagen, so it's no big deal. So that was where we started. You can see that's the crankcase, the conrod's hanging out the side, little 4-cylinder Volkswagen. Very inoffensive little engine, 2 spark plugs per cylinder, 2 completely independent ignition systems. One's a magneto, so even if the battery goes flat, it keeps going. The other one is an electronic system. I'm very pleased about that. Runs beautifully on both of them, incidentally. There's the cylinders there. They have 4 separate cylinders. The cylinder heads, however, are the same. So sometime later, there we have the completed Volkswagen, and it didn't take long. It was about a week and a bit, I think we did. We did have a couple of interesting moments. When you put this together, you have to have the piston in here and the piston pins have circlips either side. John had done a sterling job of putting all the circlips in. And when he went to fit the last circlip, there was a plump. I said, "Don't like the sound of that, John." "And oh, it'll be just over there, Richard." I said, "Yeah, sure, mate." So off he went and grotted around in the garage for the better part of half an hour before giving up. There's a lovely bloke out in Aussie Park at the V-Dub Centre. And I went over there and said, "You got some circlips?" And he said, yeah, there you go. Let me know if you need anything else. So we visited him a couple of times for bits and pieces. So that went back together again. My mate who's building one of these said, "I think you're going to have to do a little bit of work with carving that propeller." And there she is, sitting down. You can see it kind of starts to look like an aeroplane now, doesn't it? You know, the engine mount's off. There's the cockpit area here. There's the aft fuselage, and the tail is on. So now came the next big part, which is putting the wings on. We carried that up the side and put it in the garage. The long-suffering Margaret's lovely Hyundai Elantra. Sorry, that's going to have to go outside for a couple of days. What, my car? Yep. So what we had to do was put the wings on. You might notice there is a little coil of hose. It's just some plastic piping. And the reason we used that was to put on one wingtip to the other wingtip, fill it full of water, so we got a exact level. I'd like to claim great credit for that, but it was another mate of mine's idea. I sent some pictures to a friend of mine in Brisbane who said, "I don't know what anybody else in Western Australia is doing for spirit levels, because it looks like you've got all of them." At that stage I had a picture with spirit levels everywhere, but we got it right. There's the point there. The aircraft had to be dead level. We had to pick up the rear spars. We had to put in these spars in there, slide this in, and the two spars actually mesh together. So they are held in very, very tightly. Again, I'm very happy for that. It's only actually held in place by 4 bolts. One at the front, one at the back, and the same on the other side. But it's pretty substantial where it's holding on. But once again, we're all pleased about that. So there it was in the garage, and we put it all together like that. And then at that point we pulled it to bits again, because this had to go out the back again. This shows looking down. There's that wing box, and this is the front floor. This is in the back section, so your seat is sitting on top of that, and they are the undercarriage sections. Going up in there are a couple of solid titanium rods, and those solid titanium rods had to have a hole drilled in them, a 3/8 hole, which lined up with a hole there. They were 1 1/8 inches, and I think from memory they were 15 inches long, and they were $500 US each. Who knows all about drilling titanium? Fortunately, a good friend of mine who was a fitting and machining guy in TAFE said to me, "Richard, know all about that. Come over to my place," and he's not far away. So for starters, we put those up there, marked them, drilled the holes. Spot on. But it got worse. When you look at this, this is just the front of the aeroplane there. We've fitted up the nose wheel. Once we'd fitted up the nose wheel, we had to fit up the main wheels. The tables got pitched out of there, and what we finished up with was this. There it is there. How does it all work? There's that titanium rod. This was easy. Although, there's the little hole that we had to cut. That was a horrible drama. Finished up cutting it out again with my little grinding wheel. Down there is a sort of a knuckle that just slips over there. You have to line up that. We did a wheel alignment on that. It's actually set with around about 1/2 degree of toe in. Put that in place. I actually glued them in place with a bit of Aerobatic. They already had the holes in them. Carted them off to my good mate Kevin and said, "This is where we need the holes." And he smiled at me and said, "Are you sure?" I said, "Yep." So bingo, we got our holes through there. So there's a bolt at that end holding the wheel in place, bolt there holding the undercarriage leg in place, and bingo. By now we're getting pretty close to the end. There's the brakes. The original brakes for the Sonex were cable operated drum brakes. I looked at Murray and said, "There's no way in history that we're doing that." I actually had got a couple of little motor scooter brake units, but Sonex brought out some brakes themselves. There's the master cylinder sitting in the middle, one on top of the other, and down at the wheel end is a funny little thing. It's got a disc in there. Most disc brakes have pads either side of the disc, not this fella. It's only got pads on one side of the disc and they push that way. They did make a little comment on their modification kit. This is only suitable for aircraft with taper roller bearings. Otherwise it would just push the assembly apart. So we got our hydraulic brakes. How well do they work? They won't hold the aeroplane stationary at a full power run, but yeah, we've had it on the runway and it works. Here's where we got towards the end. Now, bear in mind, if I talk about this, March 2017. Now, at this stage, I'm saying to people who are asking, look, she'll be flying in a couple of months. Yeah, right. So, here we go. The seat's in. The controls are ready to hook up. The brakes are in. There's the instrument panel. Interesting, eh? Nothing in it. That's next. But that was only going to take, a week or so. That was going to be easy. The fuel tank is forward of that, underneath the glare shield, which is fitted there. Fuel tank's plastic. There's a few people who looked at it and rolled their eyes about that. I had a good race car mechanic who, after I'd had this done, said, "Oh, we've got to get a bag to fit inside there. We've got to put a fuel bladder in there." I said, "Jamie, go away." I had actually pulled that out once and that was enough. I'm hoping not to have to do that again. I did make the comment to Elaine just yesterday. It was all right when I was building it. Now I'm working on it. It's like working on a Mini. I don't know if any of you have worked on a Mini. It was a horrible experience. And I said, no, I don't bend nearly as well as I used to. So I need my little grandson around, but he's elsewhere at the moment. So there we are. All of that's in place. That was to be built up, but the tank, all the bits and pieces were in. There's the propeller after we carved it properly and put some black paint on it. There's all the undercarriage. Notice that there's no fairings on that, but there's the engine in place. At this stage, we'd run the engine. Shirley Harding from the SAAA said, "Oh, Richard," she said, "when I started the engine in my aeroplane, I cried and I cried." And I thought, yeah, that's probably not appropriate, so I didn't do that. But it was good fun. We made a lot of noise, terrified the neighbour's dog, which I had to apologise for. The exhaust system, incidentally, just goes out there and down. Mufflers, not applicable. And there she is, all ready to go. And I thought at this stage, look, it's just about done. It's easy. That little wooden piece there is designed to put the engine cowling on. And the cowling comes as two fiberglass halves. You put it into place, you mark it out, the plans cover it beautifully. It's so easy. No, it isn't. However, after a long time, it finished up looking like this. So there were a few muttered curses, however, there it was. So that was done, and you'll also notice that the windscreen is in place. that genuinely was one of those really neat little jobs, and that was easy. The canopy made up for the different. There's the frame for the canopy, and you've got to get that in the right place. All those little spaces were about that, and that was diddling around. Now folks, if confession is good for the soul, the canopy that I put on was number 3. When you bought a kit from overseas, they made you buy 2. In my case, that wasn't enough. So I had to buy another one. If I might, well, I bought another 2, didn't I? Now, if you're living in Milwaukee, you just go up the road, cough out another $200 and buy another canopy and go fit it. Over here, I thought, nah. We'll have 2, thanks. They're $250 each, but the second one only costs you $150. I thought, well, that's not too bad. Our dollar had gone down, so the price went up a bit. Then I thought, there's a couple of things about the windscreen I didn't like all that much. There's a couple of things I could do better. That was only going to be another $100. So I sent off my request to Sonex, and they said, yep, no problem. And then I got the shipping bill. And the shipping bill was $600 US. However, to be fair, Sonex put those and they wrapped them up in brown paper. And then they put them in a cardboard box. And then they put the cardboard box in one of those American plywood wooden boxes. And even built a little pallet on the bottom of it. And then they took it by truck to Chicago, by train to Long Beach in California, on a boat, which coincidentally was the same boat that the kit came out in all those years ago, and it got to Fremantle Harbour. Now I reckon that's not too bad. $600 is fair. To get that kit, that box, from the boat to my place in Woodvale, cost another $880 Australian. So you think we're the smart country. I reckon I took every girlfriend or boyfriend for everybody in the Port Authority. I think we took them to dinner, gave them presents, did whatever. That is just ridiculous, isn't it? They're just absolutely crazy. Anyway, a good mate of mine who works with speed cars said, get used to it. Don't make any more mistakes, Richard. You won't get any cheaper next time. I'm happy to say that was the only time we got hit by that. If I had it to do again, I think I'd go to Oshkosh and pack them up myself and bring them home on the aeroplane. It would have been a lot cheaper, or at least no more expensive. So after mucking up 2 of these things, I was determined to make a really nice job of the next one. And there we are. New windscreen, new canopy. Notice it's got that protective stuff on it. We didn't take that off until quite a bit later. Good idea to do. And I'm happy to say that the canopy is not too bad. And there she was, all the fairings are on, and she's ready to go. At this point, one of the boys said to me, go and talk to Andy Allen out in Wangara. He's a painter, and he has painted 6 aeroplanes for the Sport Aircraft Association so far. Went out and talked to him about painting aluminium. He said, mate, you know yourself, we've got all sorts of media in motor cars. We've got fiberglass, we've got carbon fibre, we've got aluminium, we've got mild steel. We have to know how to do the whole lot. And so off it went to paint. Should mention this before we go, the finished instrument panel, cylinder head temperature, exhaust gas temperature, oil pressure, oil temperature, voltmeter, tacho. Wonderful people. I was in Roberto Franco's office and he was showing me this beautiful set of digital gauges that he'd put in his Skyball. I saw these on top and I said, hey mate, what are you doing with those? And he said, oh, you can have them. I said, don't be ridiculous. I said, you know, no, I'll give you money for them. He said, $50. And I said, that's stupid. Any one of them is worth more than that. He said, $100, Richard, otherwise piss off. So I got the message from that. He gave me those for $100, which was absolutely lovely. Tachometer, yeah, purchased that at somebody's aerospace over in Welshpool. I've actually flown behind these gauges, the airspeed indicator and the altimeter, came out of a 182 that I used to fly in parachute dropping ops. It was parked up somewhere near Karratha and a big hurricane was coming through, so they put it in a hangar. Pity that the hangar then collapsed on poor old EUR. So the engine survived and so did the instruments. I got those too. Steve Robinson gave me the compass. He just upgraded a whole heap of things in his T28 and he said, here's a compass, here's a radio. I thought, whoa, beauty. The radio, sad to say, was 24 volts. I talked to Sean Walsh and he said, don't even think about one of those voltage transformers. He said, cost quite a bit and very, very noisy, you'll hate it. Go and buy yourself an ICOM 210. Very brief story, ICOM were naughty boys, didn't get their radio certified. In the end, the US and CASA said, if you've got one, you can keep it. If it breaks, you can replace it. You are, however, not allowed to put a new one in as new equipment. That meant there were quite a few of these around. I finished up with my really nifty little ICOM 210 for a bit under $1,000, and that's about a $2,800 radio. There's a sticker on the side that says experimental. You have no idea all the lovely things that allows us to do, like running non-certified radios. So there's the panel, throttle here, there's the mixture. The trim is just a little spring bias. And so it was packed up. This was the first journey, the 2 wings and a whole lot of bits and pieces out to the paint shop. There's the aeroplane, very quick one. I had a trailer that was 6 foot wide for the first lot. Then we came back, got the same trailer. The undercarriage was 6'1" wide. However, we got another trailer and that's the one that's there now. So there she was out to Andy Allen's paint shop. The low bake oven, my sister-in-law said to me, it's a cake, you cook it? I said, nah, it doesn't work like that. So anyway, there she was. We brought it out of the paint shop and we put it down in Steve Robbie's hangar. It's really nice to have some nice friends. Steve sports a North American Trojan T28, a turbine-engined Lancer 4 pressurised, a Aerobatic Tobago and a CJ6 Nanchang, and a little Sonex in the corner. So I'm very, very grateful for that. I'm most grateful that he has had it there. We put it together and we took it outside to give it a try. And there she is, taxiing around. The radio worked. There was no interference on the radio. The brakes worked. Everything responded. We've had her out since then. Now, here's the deal. That was February 2018. A very good friend of mine said, that's your picture in February 2018. It's bloody near May. Good grief, man, what have you been doing? The answer is filling in papers. I did get the requisite pack from Mr. Casa and they said to me, yep, we've got that. So they sent me papers and I sent them money. And my very good friends, John Brown and Colin Morrow, came over to do the inspection, and Colin said, have you got your exemption from noise certificate? And he said, well, you have got the inspection pack, haven't you? I said, is that the same as the C of A pack? Oh, no. So I rang up the SAAA, I sent them more money and they're sending paper, but I haven't got it yet. Watch this space, people. It's going to fly before long.
This one here, is that flaps?
That's brakes.
Brakes, and that's flaps.
That's flaps. But I haven't got the walkway on this side. It obviously only works this side. Really, it's a good thing to leave the flaps down because you can get in the aeroplane so much easier.
So is this permanently rated as an experimental? I see you.
Oh yeah. Yeah, so you've got to have that there. I mean, the big plus about it is it's really built to certified standards, in my opinion. Yeah. But, I mean, the radio was a huge plus. $3,000 radio for $1,000.
Yes.
Because it's not allowed in certified aeroplanes as new stuff. It's really neat. I can do all the maintenance. So am I going to have a sinking fund? And no, I'll just fly the thing.
Right.
When it needs fixing, I'll fix it. 100 hourlies, you know, what are you going to do? Compression test, oil change, filter, cut the filter open, have a look. Compression test, or what they call a compression test, really a leakage test. And yeah, I'll continue on. Thank you. Yeah, really nice. Thank you. I appreciate it.
How'd you get in? Did you have to step right up to there?
Yeah. And
right. So
there.
yeah. So they didn't think of making the flaps a bit shorter, and so you could just step over here.
Here's an interesting thing. When you buy it, you got an option with the flaps. They have aerobatic flaps and standard flaps. I opted for standard because I don't need bending moments on the wing anyway. So you get long flaps, short ailerons. The alternative is you can build it with long ailerons, short flaps.
Yeah.
So yeah, they allow you to do that. But you're right. This is just one of those things where you got to your way up like that.
Imagine this original special aviation full river design.
Oh yeah, no, they're not Bunnings Aerospace ones. So they're aluminium with a stainless steel shaft in them.
Yeah.
And
So to get the VH reg, does that mean you had to have it inspected all the way through? Or?
No. It's an experimental aeroplane.
Okay.
All I got to do now, look, I'd be quite happy to get in this and take it for a burn now. So it's just paperwork that I'm working through. And had I known about that other information pack, which hopefully will turn up in the next couple of days, yeah, I think it would have been. But I said to people, you know, they said, when's it going to fly? Oh, a couple of weeks. And now I'm saying, pretty soon.
What's your endurance, you know, like?
Oh, a lot. If you're back at back, yeah, well that exceeds me. It'll run for 5 hours. If you fly it stupidly at full throttle, it's probably about 4 hours. I've just always been in the bad habit of landing with just a bit of flap, and this will probably be the same. About 50 litres, just a bit under 48, I think.
4 hours?
5 hours.
5 hours?
But 5 hours is far too long. I have flown an aeroplane twice.
Yeah.
Once 4 hours 55, the other 5 hours and 5, Kalgoorlie to Ceduna and Ceduna back.
Yeah.
And it was just at least 2 hours too long.
Where do you think you're going non-stop? Esperance?
Oh yeah, you could do that if you wanted.
Yeah.
You could go to Forest if you wanted it. And I had ELS, which was Ewing's little Sonex, and I was going to have that. That's just...
I'm the 10th person that asked you, I suppose.
No. That's the... all of the cowling is put on with hinges.
Yeah.
Now, they're not really being used as hinges. They're only used as retainers.
Oh.
So you can see there is a hinge up there and there.
Oh.
It's put in there. That's the sort of hinge that we're talking about there. And there's another one across the middle here. There's another one down there and a couple in the side. Yeah, initially I thought, shit, it's going to be a monster to take the cowling off, but it's not. I've kind of got used to it now. You know, I know you take this one off first and then you take that one and then you take the side ones, and the assembly is the reverse of that.
What does it weigh?
All up 1,100 pounds. This one at the moment weighs, what was it, 650, I think, something like that.
It originates in America, talking about pounds.
Oh yeah, it's all in pounds, so nobody wants to talk about kilograms. So I mean, it actually works out to 500 kilograms because 1,100 pounds is exactly 500 kilograms. So yeah, that would get you there.